Callan. And we also have legal expert and commentator Laura Coates. She's a former assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia. Paul, I think one of the things that's pretty interesting about this case is that the statute of limitations was set to expire soon, and then you see these charges come to light now. The statute of limitations, what, 12 years?
Yeah, it's a 12-year statute in Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is kind of a long statute for sex crimes, although there's been a movement in recent years to extend the statute, and many states have. But to wait until the last day before expiration is very, very unusual, and I find it particularly unusual because he testified under oath in a civil case. The prior DA had invested this case previously and decided not to pursue charges. So it's really exceptional that they would have waited this long to actually posit charges.
What do you think about that, Laura? Why? What's changed really now? Aside from this deposition becoming public, there were 10 years ago or so, there were 14 women who were alleging that they'd been assaulted by Bill Cosby, and their allegations were largely swept aside. What's changed now?
What's changed is the prosecutor, frankly. There's a new prosecutor on this case who's looking at it with a new lens. But what is different about this particular victim that the other ones do not have is that we as a society, and in all the sexual assault cases I've ever prosecuted, one of the big legal hurdles you have is if there is a delayed report. When there's a delayed report, the credibility of the victim goes down. People are more skeptical to believe. But in this victim's particular instance, she reported quickly. She was disbelieved to the point of not having a criminal charge brought. She was persistent and steadfast in her approach, filed a civil suit, and then came back and sued the first prosecutor for defamation as well. And so you have a different victim who's viewed differently, even the other 40 or plus victims who have already been tried and have been trusted in the court of public opinion.
Do you think that he's going to show up at court today?
If he does, I'd be surprised. It'll be a very short hearing. The whole purpose is just to preserve his rights and plead not guilty. But the most important part of today will be to set that motion schedule, because there's a very important motion coming. And that is, can the other alleged victims testify in this criminal trial about whether or not he has a general theme of this sort of criminal behavior? That date will be set very quickly.
And you know, Brianna, the normal process when somebody is indicted for a felony is that a warrant for his arrest is issued. If there's been an ongoing relationship with defense attorneys, prosecutors will sometimes say, we will not enforce the warrant, we'll allow your client to surrender. So I would think that Cosby's attorneys would have made a really serious effort to get him into court today. But if he's somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in the country, maybe they're going to cut him some slack and let him come in at a later date. So we'll just have to see if he shows up. It's always unusual when a felony defendant doesn't show up for his own arraignment. I mean, this is not a parking ticket. This is a 10-year felony that will have a devastating effect on his life and the life of the complainant ultimately.
So if he's geographically in the area of Montgomery County, you think there is a likelihood that he could show up?
I'd be very surprised if he did not. If he's in California or in Europe or something, then he might have a reasonable excuse for not showing up. Obviously, the prosecutor's got to go forward with this because the statute of limitations is about to expire.
What does that look like when he does show up, whether it's today or whether it's sometime in the future? Would you see him in handcuffs? Would you see him being processed, as we sometimes do with defendants?
Well, it's not going to be the typical criminal defendant where they were brought in, as Paul was talking about, in the back of a squad car and handcuffed and shackled and possibly in an orange jumpsuit. This is somebody who has been out among the public before he's been charged. They're going to probably plead not guilty, and they're going to address whether or not he can remain released until there's a trial actually happening. And given his, I know it's a fall from grace, but he certainly has ties to the community and would come back and has no criminal record that has actually been proven, he will remain on the outside until whatever trial date is set. And only if convicted will that even change. It'll be a very short hearing, though, and it will not be, I don't think it's even filmed in Pennsylvania. It'll be a lot of heckling probably from the outside, but once he's inside, it will be just another case in Pennsylvania.
I can tell you, Brianna, for a normal defendant facing charges this serious, you know, usually what happens, they go into the police station, they have to be fingerprinted, and then they're transported, and they remain in a cell until the arraignment takes place. On the other hand, if his lawyers have negotiated a surrender, a voluntary surrender, what usually happens is that's all done, and then he's released from the police station, and he'll come in wearing a suit and tie and just looking like an ordinary civilian. He's not going to be in an orange jumpsuit or handcuffs, I can assure you of that.
All right, well, this is the big question. We'll be waiting to see when he is supposed to be in court here in less than a couple of hours, if that really happens. Laura, Paul, thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you.
Up next.